Afterburn by Crabappler. Chapter 2. There's a bench positioned opposite the door to Recovery Girl's office. It sits in front of one of the banks of floor-to-ceiling windows, a comfortable, sunny spot that's a terrible place to sit and try and read your phone screen. Tenya squints at the phantom icons. He's got them down to the absolute minimum, but that's still a dozen little colored squares for him to get confused, and he can't tell which one is his new Sudoku app. He sighs and leans back, head thumping gently against the window glass. He's being ridiculous. He knows exactly which one is the Sudoku app, because he always keeps his Sudoku apps in exactly the same place. Upper left corner. He's just trying to distract himself from the memory of Uraraka's stricken expression at the breakfast table. What a scene. Tenya, Midoriya, and Todoroki had been wrenched from an idyllic moment of domesticity into something that could have been taken straight out of one of his grandfather's favorite dramas. Uraraka, the pure beta, her unspoken love betrayed. Bakugo, the rival alpha who joined the breakfast group only to make it clear he'd been cast aside. Mineta and Ashido, Kaminari, and Kirishima, her Gakure. The friends scandalized and titillated by the shocking reveals. And what a reveal! Uraraka is possibly Midoriya's closest friend here at UA, and yet she hadn't known he's an Omega. Worse still, she'd found out only after her chance at cementing a relationship had been ruined. Her heart's been broken, the trust between herself and Midoriya put into question, and Tenya wants so badly to apologize for his role in it all, except he can't. He did it on purpose. He had seized on the opportunity to claim Midoriya, knowing full well he was being unfair, that he would cause heartache and resentment. It was a merciless, selfish decision, and he can't even feel guilty about it because, as he learned years ago listening to his family discuss the cutthroat sides of the hero business, some chances only come once, and you have to grab with both hands before they slip away. So at breakfast, he did the only thing he could do. Keep quiet and let Uraraka pretend the cracks in her cheerful smile weren't visible, and stop Midoriya from going after her because Tenya can at least spare her the cruelty of salt in her wounds. He's worried about her, though. Is she crying alone? Hagakure went after her, but is that enough? Maybe a word to Asui? He opens his contact list and stares blankly at the washed-out names. Like the icons, he doesn't really need to see anything to know what's there, which means he's also suddenly confronted with every one of his family's contact numbers. He's been sitting here for almost 7 minutes, and he hasn't called them yet. Instead, he's been, brooding? Making excuses? How can I be so afraid? He shouldn't be. Not of his family. They love him. They unquestionably want the best for him. But the thought of confronting them, as he had his classmates facing down staring eyes full of judgment. And his parents will judge him. He's the Ida family heir. His actions and his choices reflect on them as a whole. When Midoriya had brought it up, Tenya had been confident in his ability to deal with that. But having faced the reality of such a thing once, he's a lot less certain now. He's always been close with Mama. Will she be upset he didn't ask her for advice? Will she smile like Uraraka did and try to hide her hurt? Will he even realize she's doing it if he tells her over the phone? What about Mother? So intense, so concerned with protocol. Will she disapprove of his slapdashed and rushed approach to courting Todoroki? Will she be disappointed in Midoriya's more casual style? His father's never liked Endeavor. How will he react to Todoroki? And will grandfather truly accept a triad that will produce no children? He's so proud of the family legacy. Will either of them believe that the Ida name won't be consumed by the Todorokis? And then there's his brother, who has entrusted him with Igenium. Tenya scowls at the contact list so deeply that the furrow between his eyebrows aches. A chance twist of his wrist and the sun-bleached screen reflects his own face back at him, his troubled frown and narrowed eyes. Seeing himself, he suddenly realizes he's no longer sitting straight, but is curled forward on the bench, that he's gripping his phone so tight his knuckles have gone pale, that he's got a headache building, and his mouth is dry, his throat aching with a knot of stress that makes swallowing a chore. Am I still so weak to be so scared of the consequences of my choices? Am I still such a child? How can I be a hero when I can't even face myself? No, he's tired of failing to measure up. He straightens to sit properly on the bench, closes his eyes, goes back over the list of names and worries, nods. There's really only one person he's truly afraid of confronting, and so there's really only one person he should be calling. Everyone else in his family, and Uraraka as well, can wait. He hits the speed dial for Tensei. He has to force stillness through his legs to keep from nerveless jiggling, a bad habit not to be indulged in by a hero. The appearance of confidence in all situations is paramount. Likewise, he makes sure to square his shoulders and lift his head, relax into the balmy caress of the sun pouring through the windows. His shadow on the infirmary door transforms from a misshapen thing back into a confident young man, and the sight of it chases away the last of the ache between his brows. Just in time. Tenya! You're calling me during school hours? Something wrong? The sun is nothing to the warmth and light that pours into Tenya at the sound of that voice. It's not school hours. We're on alternate schedules right now for night patrols. Ah, I should have known you'd be too responsible. Wait, doesn't that mean you should be sleeping right now? No, I have things I need to take care of before tonight. Are you busy right now? A sudden stab of worry. You have physiotherapy today, don't you? I shouldn't have... Whoa now, stop right there! Tensei's voice cuts through Tenya's mounting guilt with practiced ease. We both know you wouldn't have phoned me if it wasn't important, so stop working yourself up about the details. I'm at home, I'm not busy, and physio can be put off if it needs to be. I'm guessing whatever you have to say can't. It could wait. Your health is very important, and skipping even one session of physiotherapy could... But it shouldn't wait, right? Tenya watches his shadow try to curl back in on itself. He sighs, puts a little more steel in his spine. No, it shouldn't. It's important, and it'll affect the whole family. Tensei's low whistle slides through the phone and down the length of the empty hall. That much, huh? What'd you do? Get engaged? Well, essentially, yes. There is a long moment of silence. Then, those damn dorms! Should have known this would happen if you stuck a bunch of teenagers in together like that. Who did you get pregnant? What? Tenya splutters, fumbling the phone and almost dropping it before he manages to get control of himself. I would never! But you say you're basically engaged? Then... you let an alpha mount you? No! Tenya squawks into the phone. The echo bounces off the corridor walls like a particularly outraged pigeon, and he winces guiltily and lowers his volume to hiss, Please stop slandering my good sense and let me tell you! I'm all ears, and really curious now! The words ride on his outrage, coming out easier than expected. I've made an official offer to enter a triad with an Omega and an Alpha. It's been accepted. I haven't, consummated anything, but we consider it official. I wanted to tell you before things went any further because of who's involved. Tensei's voice gets gentler. Yes? My Alpha is Todoroki Shoto. Saying it out loud like this, even if only to his brother, it feels heavy. It feels like setting down stones. For a wall? For a foundation? And our Omega is Midoriya Izuku. I see. A male Omega and a Todoroki for an Alpha. No wonder you called. Tensei goes silent, and Tenya settles in to wait, tilting his head to watch the wind gently stir the trees outside, shifting the dappled pattern their shadows trace on the walkways. Spring has faded and summer is racing toward them. Another few months and it'll be time for the sports festival. Students come and go outside, hurrying to their next class. Flash of color. One particular group passes graphs between themselves while others look over their shoulders, point, wave their arms, laugh, and shove at each other. The management department? Unexpectedly rowdy for students focused on such a crushingly omnipresent and momentously important aspect of hero life. He wonders how they'd have advised him to handle this phone call. He wonders what they'd think of his new triad. He wonders how unhappy Tensei is to need to take so long to speak. Finally, Tensei says, I have a lot of questions and a lot of worries, as you probably expect. But the fact that you're calling before cementing this relationship shows me that you're putting a lot of thought into it, and I trust your judgment. So how about this? Let's not do anything more over the phone. Instead, why don't you bring them to meet me this weekend? Do you have Sunday free? No, not with the irregular schedule they've given us. Our next free day is Tuesday. That's fine, but it'll have to be at the office. I have some paperwork to look over, assignments and such. Paperwork and not patrolling. Tenya can't stop his left hand from curling into a fist, all too aware of how the fingers are just that fraction less agile, the grip weaker. Of course. What time would be convenient? Between 3 and 6 p.m. is good. I'll make sure the front desk expects you. All right, I'll see you then. Yeah. A low laugh filled with mischief. I know it's hard, but try to keep it in your pants for now, all right? At least until Big Brother can inspect your suitors.
But I'm not some. There's no need.
More laughter. See you then, Tenya. Silence. Tenya hits the end call button and finally relaxes, stale air and stress whooshing from his lungs in a long sigh. His muscles ache with relief as they're allowed to unknot. He feels a little lightheaded with a sudden uptick of blood flow, a little floaty with the weight of fear off his shoulders. Back on track after this morning's unpleasantness. Now to keep my momentum, he tells himself and begins composing a text to Asui. Tenya's finished his texting and is on his second round of Sudoku when the infirmary door opens and Midoriya steps out. They'd taken the time for Midoriya to change and shower after breakfast, so he's clean and dressed in a fresh t-shirt and loose jeans with his favorite green hoodie for added cover and his feet jammed into his ubiquitous red sneakers. He looks soft and slappy and huggable, and it had been an effort of will for Tenya not to wrap his arm around Midoriya's shoulders and pull him close. Now those shoulders are hunched, and Midoriya's smile is apologetic as he mumbles his thanks and bows to Recovery Girl, who follows him out like a tiny scolding sparrow.
I know you had a reason this time, Midoriya, she sighs. But that's the problem. There's always a reason, and you always wind up back in my clinic.
She catches sight of Ida.
So you're the young man looking to be this month's beta, Ida? Good. You have a lot of sense when it comes to your health. Maybe it'll rub off on Midoriya here. He'll certainly do a better job than some people I could name,
she adds, scowling. That's not fair, Midoriya protests. I didn't tell him. Magago again. Ida frowns and adds his voice in silent agreement to Recovery Girl's scorn as she snorts and crosses her arms, favors Midoriya with a distinctly unimpressed look and says,
Did he ask?
But then she continues,
Did he ask you about any existing health conditions or medication you're on? No, of course not. He gave you a diet plan and training regimen to shape you, but couldn't be bothered to learn about the material he was sculpting it. And what has it ultimately led to?
She swats at Midoriya's hand, the scarred, crooked one.
Yet you see, you're both too inexperienced for your own good, a pair of babies, and at the stakes you're planking.
Her voice trails off. It's her turn to slump now, leaning against the doorframe as if she's being crushed by the weight of every one of her years. The change in Midoriya is subtle, but definite. His head is still bowed, but his back straightens, and his face sheds its smile, grows serious, and somehow older. We've caused you a lot of worry, haven't we? I'm sorry, recovery girl. Soft words in that sincere voice Midoriya uses when he tries to coax you to bear your wounds. And this is not about Bakugo. The glances shared between Midoriya and Recovery Girl are too pregnant with words unspoken but already said. Arguments had so often, they no longer need repeating. Tenya looks in on the scene as if from another world and wonders, what is this?
Well, at least you're improving, even if it is in spite of yourselves,
she says at last.
Your appointment with the specialist is next Monday evening. Mind you take those suppressants until then, not the blockers. Those you deliver to me tomorrow. Now get, I have backlog.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, says Midoriya, bowing once more. Recovery Girl grunts and spears
Tenya with a glare. You watch over him. He's too slippery for his own good,
she snaps. Then she whirls and stomps back into her office, the door shutting behind her with a firm and final clap. The pair of them are left in awkward silence in the hall. Midoriya shuffles his feet. He tilts his head and peers charmingly up at Tenya from beneath his lashes, that sweet, sheepish smile back at place. Sorry, have you been waiting long?
It's fine, I haven't been idle. I phoned my brother and texted several people. Hansame is expecting us over at the development studio.
Both of us? Midoriya cocks his head.
I'm asking her if it's possible to include an air filter in my mask. Todoroki suggested your mouth guard could be similarly improved.
Green eyes light up with enthusiasm. That's a really good idea. It shouldn't weigh much, and it'll definitely be an asset since even quirks that aren't airborne threats can have nasty side effects like smoke. And when you factor in all the hazards in city rescue work, like gas leaks or a chemical spill, it's actually kind of a wonder we haven't already thought of it. Especially for physical types like us who need to be able to breathe clearly to be at our most effective. I wonder if we should tell the others. I should know for sure, since her quirk could interact with chemicals present on a scene, and Kirishima and Sato are like us, so them too. And Ochako, since she's looking to get more combat-oriented, but also wants to do rescue work, and she already has a helmet as part of her costume. Midoriya trails off into his usual muttering, falling into step with Tenya, and he slants into Tenya's space so nicely, so neatly, is just the right height that Tenya's arm is coming up to curl around Midoriya's shoulder on instinct. His sense of personal boundaries trips him up. Is this allowed? Is this too much? Is it appropriate in the school corridors? It leaves him with his arm half raised, hovering in the nebulous space behind Midoriya's back. He would have probably stayed like that all the way to the development studio if they hadn't had to turn a corner and fallen just slightly out of step. Midoriya lagging due to his preoccupation and Tenya crowding against him, his arm pressing against Midoriya's back, his hand reflexively settling on Midoriya's shoulder, and suddenly he has Midoriya's sturdy frame held close enough their hips bump. The musk and grass of Midoriya's scent filling Tenya's nose, and Midoriya's face filling his sight because he's now got all of Midoriya's attention suddenly focused on him. Ah, says Tenya intelligently, as he stares down at Midoriya, and as he watches, entranced, Midoriya's eyes dilate until the brilliant emerald is nothing but a thin, glittering ring around the dark of pupil. Midoriya's tongue slips out to lick full pink lips. You're big, Midoriya blurts. Then his eyes snap shut and his face goes the same glorious shade of rose as this morning when he noticed, I mean, you're tall! You're really tall! Wow, I never noticed before, but I guess because I've never been this close! Hi!
Yes, I am a tall person.
Tenya agrees, frantically searching for a way out of this sudden reminder of Midoriya's admiration of Tenya's more personal assets.
Though I am not the tallest in class, which is a shame because, statistically, height is a great advantage in both combat and social situations. My entire family is quite tall, however, and as I have not yet reached the end of my growth years, so I still have room to get taller. My brother is 193 centimeters, for example, he says, helpfully illustrating with a chop of his free hand at the correct height. Midoriya seizes on the topic like a drowning man grabs a raft. Your brother! That's right, you said you phoned him? Is everything okay? The reminder of his brother and the emotions and problems, the questions, and wherever he's tangled up around him finally pull Tenya from his sordid thoughts and back into more practical ones. Yes, Or at least as well as can be expected. I fear he's still adjusting.
A diplomatic way to describe the endless rounds of physiotherapy, the long stretches of silence, the faraway haze over eyes once sharp and full of energy.
Actually, I called him because I wanted to tell him about our new relationship.
He pauses, searching for the words to explain the tangle of reasoning and family obligations.
While I stand by what I told you last night, it is true that my family will have concerns about you and Todoroki. Since Ingenium is my brother's legacy, I wanted to speak with him first.
A cautious glance down at Midoriya's face shows him frowning, but it isn't the sad droop Tenya had been expecting. Its brows furrowed in thought, the lower lip caught between teeth for Midoriya to worry as he tries to work through a puzzle. Midoriya says, "Me? I can understand. No one with a legacy like your family's wants a dead... a male Omega." He flushes a bit at his slip-up and correction, but Tenya doesn't scold him. It's good to hear Midoriya already trying to speak of himself more positively. "But why Shoto?" Tenya blinks, startled that he has to explain when Midoriya is normally so quick on the uptake when it comes to hero business.
Because he's a Todoroki, of course.
And when the questions don't leave Midoriya's eyes,
as prestigious as our family is in the industry, the Ingenium office doesn't hold the kind of popularity or resources that Endeavor's does, especially now that he's number one. With Todoroki as my alpha, the risk of a hostile takeover and assimilation into Endeavor's business is significant.
"Oh!" says Midoriya. His eyes narrow in thought, and his hand creeps up to tug and play with his lower lip, an extremely distracting habit Tenya hopes Midoriya never breaks. "That's... I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense, except... They walk in relative silence for a bit as Midoriya processes the information, not so much mumbling as mouthing words and making soft little exclamations, rolling the plushness of his pink lip between thumb and forefinger, and Tenya does his best not to stare and accidentally steer them into a wall. When Midoriya finally does speak, it's not the words Tenya expected, and not in the tone he'd anticipated either. It's serious and pitched intimately quiet. "You need to talk to Shoto about Endeavor. Soon. In private." The hairs at the back of Tenya's neck prickle. He keeps himself and Midoriya moving out of sheer reflex, a primitive desire to escape the dread trying to crawl up his spine on hundreds of skittering spider legs. His arm tightens around Midoriya's shoulders. Midoriya whispers, "It's important, Ida." Tenya nods. It's a bit stiff, so he reinforces it with,
"I understand. You can count on me."
And a firm slice of the hand through the air to cut away any doubt. Midoriya's shoulders twitch. He leans into Tenya's embrace, the movement slow and deliberate feeling. Yeah, we can."